So this is where we left our biology heroes yesterday. Today is the 8th, 3/8/16. And we said that predation is an effective regulator of population size. What happens when you end up with a lot of your predator species? What happens to the population of your prey species? It decreases. And when the population of your prey species decreases, then in turn, what happens to the population of your predator species? It decreases. Well, gee, when your predator species decreases, what happens to the population of your prey species? It increases. So we're on this never-ending sort of up and down and up and down. And they're really related. But predation kind of helps keep that in check. It helps keep populations of prey species in check. And we talked a little bit about the rabbits in Australia. Rabbits were introduced to Australia. They had no predators. And they bred like bunnies, because they were bunnies. And they ate everything. They were this ravenous plague. Okay, so we had talked briefly yesterday about the fact that, evolution helps drive, or predation drives evolution. So if you're not very good at getting food, you don't survive, your offspring don't survive, and if you're really easy to catch, you die. You don't get to survive, you don't get to pass on your genes. So natural selection favors good predators and hard to catch prey. This is just kind of a recap from yesterday, real briefly. Okay. We also talked briefly about the fact that if you look tougher than you are, that's a great way to survive. And blending in is also a good way to survive. We don't have anybody in camo today, but this idea of camouflage is that you're tough to see. And that means the better camouflage you are, the more likely you are to survive, the more likely you are to pass on your genes, and hence evolution favors good camouflage. All right, so we don't think about eating a plant as a predator relationship. But it is. Groundhogs are vicious predators of clover or dandelions. Deer, has anybody here ever planted little baby trees? Okay. One year I went insane and I planted like 400 small trees. I don't know what was wrong with me. And I did nothing to protect them whatsoever. These were out on the edge of an old farm field. Like probably 10 of them survived the first year. Yeah, deer are vicious predators. They love young baby trees, tender bark and juicy little stems. Yeah, they're vicious predators. That rabbit doesn't look too frightening to you or I, but if you're a dandelion, you might quake in fear. So this is also a predator-prey relationship. Well, we said that for animals that were prey, they developed defense mechanisms. Do you think that the prey here have any defense mechanisms? Can they run? Can they hide? Okay, exactly. So they do have defense mechanisms. Every living thing has defense mechanisms. And for plants, some of those are things like thorns and spines. Who here has ever picked, what are these delicious, wonderful things right here? Black raspberries. Nothing better than spending a day in a patch of black raspberries, getting completely torn up to shreds and lots of, Oh yeah, I've done that. I have a whole berry picking rig. It involves heavy pants, long sleeves, and I sling 2 buckets across my body on rope so that I'm hands-free. I mean, I'm serious about my berries. I love berry picking. But yeah, you get torn up. Your arms get cut up if you're stupid enough to wear shorts into the black raspberry patch. Your legs are going to get torn up if you fall in. Heaven help you, because you're going to be a mess when you come out. Yeah, thorns are a defense mechanism. There are animals that will not wade into the berry patch because they're going to get torn at. Now, there are some animals that eat berries no problem. Birds. They don't have to wade through the berry patch. They can land on the edge of a cane and daintily nibble at those berries and never get hurt. Works out pretty well for them. It actually works out pretty well for the plants, too. What do the plants get out of it? Huh? Nitrogen from their poop. They get something even better. Remember that biology is about sex and not dying? It's about spreading your genes around? Yes. Birds are very effective little planters. Birds are great gardeners. If you put a black raspberry bush out someplace and let the birds have access to it, they're going to eat those berries, and when they poop, the seeds for the berries will come out the other end, and they not only come out the other end, they come out the other end with a little load of manure. Perfect fertilizer to get those berries started. So most black raspberries, we say, oh, I don't know where it came from. I didn't plant it. It just popped up. No, a bird planted it. So what kind of relationship would that be? It's an interspecies relationship. Yeah, it's mutualistic. We'll talk more about that later. Spines on cactus, and even just having really tough leaves. Just having leaves that have a lot of fiber in them. I'm sorry. Make the plants tougher to eat. So there are animals, think about a dandelion leaf versus when spring comes on, we'll bring in some leaves. We'll do a leaf collection. Some of those things that are a lot tougher. So those all make plants harder for animals to eat. But that's not all they do. So these are physical barriers. These are physical barriers or physical defense mechanisms. Physical barriers to getting eaten. Ah, thank you.
That's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, look like it.
These are physical barriers to getting eaten. These actually prevent an animal physically from getting close enough to you to eat your food. Anybody here have cactus at home? Like little house plants? You did? Okay. My husband has a cactus. When we got married, he had 2 house plants. I have about a gazillion. And I frankly hate the cactus because as I move plants around, every single time I get stuck. I can't deal with the cactus. I'm just not smart enough. They hurt. It's a physical defense to keep animals from eating their tender flesh. Okay, well, if you can't manage a physical barrier to getting eaten, you have other options. There are chemical barriers. To getting eaten. Another common way for plants to defend themselves is to make chemicals that are harmful to herbivores. These chemicals are called secondary compounds, and examples include tobacco, which makes nicotine, poison ivy, which makes a chemical called urushiol, and wild cherry, which actually produces cyanic acid. So these would be examples of chemical barriers to being eaten. What does secondary mean? Well, yeah, second means 2. It's the second thing that happens. It's not the first thing. If you say, why did I get up this morning? Well, my primary reason was because I was hungry. My secondary reason was because I guess I have to come to school. eye. Huh? Yeah, kind of like it's not the main reason. It's another reason. So a secondary compound is not the most important compound these plants make. It's a compound that's sort of like, yeah, it's a side benefit. It's secondary. What would be the primary compound that plants make? Or the primary chemicals that they make? How do plants make a living? Photosynthesis. There's a chemical they need for photosynthesis, which is chlorophyll. And from chlorophyll and sunlight and CO2, they make sugar. So chlorophyll and sugar are the things that basically keep them alive. Those are their primary compounds. Those are the most important things for them to make, because if they don't make chlorophyll and sugar, they die. The secondary compounds help them by harming things that want to eat them, but they're of secondary importance. Okay, so we'll start from the top. Tobacco. Some of you may have used tobacco products of one sort or another. You may have smoked, you may have dipped. Tobacco has an intoxicating effect on humans. The first time you tried tobacco, you may be all lightheaded, you may be dizzy. It's the nicotine. It's the nicotine in the tobacco that does that. And I can never remember, it is not a depressant. It's a stimulant, yeah. Yeah, it's a stimulant in addicted individuals. It has a calming effect because basically they're going through withdrawal. So if they don't have the stimulant, they're agitated, and the presence of the stimulant calms them. Yeah. So yeah, nicotine's a stimulant. But a lot of wild animals don't like the sensation of biting into a leaf and having their mouth tingle or being uncomfortably lightheaded. So if you're a little rabbit, if you're a deer, you're probably not going to eat tobacco because you eat it once, you associate that smell with an unpleasant sensation, you don't eat it again. Poison ivy. Who here has ever had poison ivy? Some of you have never had poison ivy? Good for you. Lucky you. I could have said the same thing until I was 26 years old. So poison ivy has a chemical in it called urushiol. When you get it on your skin, what does it cause? Miserable, painful, itching, water blistering rash. I cannot think of anything more miserable than poison ivy. It's awful, isn't it? If you're an animal, and now some animals can eat poison ivy and they're not affected. They have evolved the ability to eat poison ivy. Humans are not among them. If you eat poison ivy, you're probably in serious trouble. All the sort of old wives' tales about eating a little leaf of it aside. I wouldn't try that. But for a lot of animals, coming in contact with poison ivy on their membranes, on their mouth, and their gums. Can you imagine having poison ivy on your gums? Yeah, I know. It makes my entire body contract. No. Okay, so we've got tobacco with nicotine, we've got poison ivy with urushiol, and cyanic acid. Wild cherries. This is a picture of a wild cherry tree. They're a tree, they're a small shrub. Beautiful little sprays of white blossoms in the spring, late spring, early summer. They produce little tiny, these are not the big fat cherries you would get at the grocery store or at a farm market. These are little teeny tiny black cherries. They're mostly pit. But the bark, the leaves, and the pits of the fruit contain cyanide. Do you know what cyanide is? It's a deadly poison. Yeah. It's super poisonous. People who have, does anybody here have horses or cattle? Okay, did. You want to keep wild cherry trees out of your pasture. Because if cows consume enough wild cherry leaves, they can actually die. First they get sick, and if they keep consuming it, they'll die. It's more concentrated in wilted leaves. So you don't want, if you're building a brush pile in a pasture where cows are going to be around and they might chew on the leaves, you do not want wild cherry in there because those secondary compounds are harmful. Okay, we are actually going to stop here. So tomorrow we're going to be doing a lab. We'll be outside, and in this chapter we're going to get to go outside a couple times, I think. You will need to wear shoes that you can get a little bit muddy. There's almost no way of avoiding, like I said, I'll try to keep you out of the deepest mud, but don't wear your fanciest brand new white sneakers tomorrow because they will get some stuff on them. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. We'll stop it right there.